Hi, I'm Rachel from Jimmy Beans Wool, and I'm going to show you how to do twisted stitches in your knitting today. And there's a lot of different applications for this technique. You can do a lot of really cool things with it. It can be done with a cable needle or without, depending on your preference. Sometimes you'll have a stitch kind of floating in the air. So if you're not comfortable with that, then you might want to have a cable needle on hand, or even just a double point needle, or heck, even like a little split ring stitch marker will work too, to kind of hang onto your stitch while you're working with it, just to make sure you don't lose it. A really good example of that is the Cambio Cowl by Laura Nelkin. And you can see we've got these stitches here that are crisscrossing, and the way you do that is you're you basically have one stitch that comes off the needle and just kind of hangs out while you work to the next point where you work with that stitch again. And you can put it on a cable needle if you want. You can put it on a little stitch marker, like I said, to hold it, or if you're comfortable, you can just kind of let it hang out in space. A little scary, but since it's a nice sticky wool, it'll hold on to itself and it won't fall. So anyway, so let me just show you how this technique works so you can get a picture of it. I've got a little swatch here. I'm working with the gray, and there are two different directions that you can cross your stitches. So if you wanted to cross, let's say you've got two stitches here. If you want to cross the second stitch over the top of the first stitch, the way you would do that is you're going to come in with your right needle and put your needle into this second stitch, but you want to go across the top of the first stitch like that, and then you knit it like normal. So what you've done is you've knit that stitch without touching this first one, but you want to leave it in place on your needle because you're not done yet. Now you need to take your needle and come back to this first stitch and then also knit that one. And now that you've worked both stitches, you can pull them both off the needles, and I don't know if you can kind of see here, but what you've done is you've switched the position of those two stitches, and now the one that was behind the first stitch has crossed over it, and it's in the front now. So that's how you do your twisted stitch to the right. So let me knit over a little ways here, and I'll show you the same thing as if you were moving it to the left, because it's a little different when you're going left. So to go left, you want to cross this first stitch over the second stitch. So in order to do that, you're going to come in from behind this time rather than in the front of your work. And you come in from behind and sort of put your needle in between those two stitches. It's kind of an awkward movement, but you'll see what I'm doing here in a second. So you come in between the two stitches, then you're going to twist your needle and then knit this stitch like normal, and then it's kind of awkward. Okay, so now I've knit that stitch. It's behind this first one, so you gotta make sure and stay behind it, or else it's gonna cross funky and you won't have the right twist like you're supposed to. So it's back here, it's still on the needle. So then you're gonna come and bring your needle forward and then knit into this stitch. And then you can go ahead and pull both of them off of the needles, and you can see what I've done there is I've switched the position, and now the first stitch is crossed to the left over that second stitch. So you've just reversed the two positions and twisted the stitches. So now this is a technique that you can use in a lot of different ways, and you'll see it used in a lot of different patterns. Sometimes what you'll be doing is you'll be crossing one stitch over 2, 3, 4, even 5 sometimes. And that's, if you're crossing more, then you need to do the technique where you do extra wraps on the previous row and then drop them on the next row. That's how you can have enough elasticity in the stitch that you can stretch it across that many stitches. So we've got another video where I showed you how to wrap it extra times and then drop it on the next row. So you might check that out if you're doing a pattern where you need that extra give in the stitch to stretch that many. But if you're just crossing over 1 or over 2 or even over 3, you can probably do it with a regular length stitch. And what I was saying before too is sometimes if it's more than 1 or 2, you end up with it hanging in the air. So what'll happen is you kind of just drop your stitch like that and leave it hanging there, and then come back and knit, and then and see, I dropped the stitch right there. So that's why it's a good idea sometimes to put that onto a stitch marker or a cable needle if your stitches are super tight like these are, or you're afraid of losing your stitch. So let me just pick that stitch back up. Okay, so that's what it would have looked like if I hadn't dropped it. So then you put it back up on the needle like I've done here, and then you just knit it like normal. And now you can see I've crossed that first stitch over 2 stitches now. And that's about as far as you can go before you're going to need to have a little extra give in the stitch, and before you're going to really need to start worrying about having a cable needle or something handy too. So yeah, so that's twisted stitches, and you can go to the right, you can go to the left, you can cross over as many as you want. You can do it in a contrast color, like you could potentially have the red crossing over the gray or the gray crossing over the red. There's lots and lots of ways that you can use that. You can do it in a really unique way, as it is here with the Laura Nelkin Cambio cowl. It's really cool how she's got these crisscrosses going, and it's with 2 different colors, you know, so it creates this X pattern, which is really neat. So you have a lot of different things that you can do with this technique, so I definitely recommend giving it a try. Have your cable needle handy just in case. While you get used to it, you might want to have the extra security of not losing your stitches when you're moving them around on your needles. So anyway, that is Twisted Stitches, and I'm Rachel from Jimmy Beans Wool. Thanks for watching.
Thunder rumbles on this American summer night.